In life, there's ups, there's downs, there's joy, there's pain, and there's cries and there's laughter. I cater to all of that at the Solution Barbershop off 40 Highway. Come on in, have a seat. I'll get you right and get you tight, and then we'll talk about life. For booking, go to wigthemobilebarber.setmore.com or scan the QR code. For more information, follow me on Facebook and Instagram, Wig the Mobile Barber.
I'm back. Can everybody hear me?
Yes,
Yup,
sir.
yup.
All right, man. Appreciate y'all joining us tonight for unpacking of episode 13, the season premiere for the second season of the Blacked Out Couch podcast, man. We had a very good, healthy dialogue, man. Last time the brothers met for the official episode. So if anybody hasn't had a chance to check that out, it's streaming on YouTube or any of your podcast platforms. But the title of that episode was "Quit Being a Bitch and Go to Therapy." Shout out to G Don. That's the G Don challenge. He's been telling us that pretty much every episode he's appeared on. So we thought that it was appropriate, man, to kick off this next season with that dialogue. So as always, man, with unpacking, man, we just kind of go back in with the follow-up conversation. If there's any thoughts, comments, questions, commentary that we may have missed, and then we also give our live audience an opportunity to engage with us, including the sisters. So uh, before I get started tonight, how's everybody doing, man? Let me get a temperature check on everybody individually.
Aside from the pollen and allergies kicking my ass, I'm actually doing all right.
I heard that. That was me last week.
Yeah, so I'm sitting about an 8 out of 10. I just hate being sick. I hate having like congestion or anything like that. But other than that, like, doing all right.
Right on. Appreciate you joining us, Brother Rogers. Anybody else? Who else we got out here? GT. I know JB out there working. What's going on, Mr. Franklin? Anybody can take the mic, man. How y'all doing?
I'm
Yeah,
doing
I'm
really
good,
well.
man. I'll go ahead, JB.
Obviously, I'm doing pretty good. No complaints.
Right on, bro. Appreciate you joining, man, as always. Game type Mike, what's the deal, baby?
Man, listen. Ooh, it's a lot, man. I'm gonna say I'm about a five right now. My lady was in a car accident yesterday with her daughter.
Oh
Um,
man.
yeah, they all right. Everything they okay. Car seems to be total. So yeah, man, stress levels are a little high right now, but I'm maintaining. I'm out right now doing some mental therapy. I'm out at the bank doing some fishing. So
Right on.
I'm maintaining, man. It's okay.
Right on, bro. We're gonna keep them in the thoughts and the prayers, man, and
Oh
make
yeah.
sure, man, you keep me posted on that situation offline, bro. I didn't have any idea about that.
For sure, we'll do.
Right on. Going on, Mr. Franklin.
What's going on, man? I'm feeling phenomenal right now, man. God is good. I'm healthy. I look good. The children healthy. Things going very, very good, man.
Right on, man. Appreciate you joining us, man, as always. And then we got Miss
Appreciate it.
Princess. Miss Princess, sister in the house. What's going on with you, babe?
Hey, hey, hey. Hi, brother. What's up, Mr. Rodney?
You so
You know,
fake. Look at you. How you doing?
just toxic. Just toxic. I hope you heal. Brother Game Type Mike, I definitely gonna reach out to sis on this evening after the call and just check in with her. But always know my thoughts and my prayers, my heart is with you and all the brothers really.
Always, family. I appreciate it.
Right on, man. So, well, look, man. I'm gonna go ahead and get started, man. I actually just had a couple of questions here, man, and so we ain't gonna spend too much time on everybody's night tonight, so we'll just go in and just kind of get it started, man. But first question, man, is just kind of as an icebreaker, man. What are everybody's thoughts on therapy? Is it something that you believe in individually? What are your thoughts or commentary just around the concept in general of seeking mental professional help for your mental needs?
I mean, I used to kind of frown upon and look down on it, but at this point where I'm at now, I actually would encourage folks to go. I think it's necessary. I think it's needed. Um, and a lot of benefit packages at people's jobs, employers actually offer these sessions for free, like maybe the first 8 or something like that. So, um, you know, it don't cost you a dime. It just takes a phone call and some of your time.
That's true, especially with man, with the ability for a lot of us therapists to go virtual, man. I mean, like I've seen folks all around the state now. It used to be very local here in Kansas City, folks who want to drive in, but like now, once the pandemic kicked off and all the insurances and EAPs were cool with like people being virtual, therapy is actually more accessible today than it was even 5 years ago, just because of that. So yeah, your benefit package should include some kind of between 3 and 10 free sessions at your job.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Did anybody else want to take the mic on that?
Yeah, I want to say that I think it's a phenomenal tool that if you need it and everything. But I will say this, and it might be a little slightly controversial, but this is just my opinion on it. I do think if a man's going to see a therapist, I think he needs to go to a male therapist. And the reason I say that is, it's certain things that when it comes to a man that a woman may not really understand, or she doesn't really, as you know, men and women, what drives us is usually different. So I'm thinking if you need a therapy, I think probably going to a man will probably be better because he'll be able to understand you a little better and the things that you may struggle with. Let's say a gentleman struggle with want to have sex with a lot of women. Well, usually that's not usually a characteristic of a woman, so she may not be able to really sympathize with the man as much as he could because he could understand it more. So I do think it's a great tool, but if somebody had to go one, I would probably suggest they probably go to a male if it's a male. That's just my opinion.
I think there's something to be said for that. I mean, like there are some guys that actually sought me out because I was a male therapist. They're like, no, I particularly I need a black male therapist. My door's been getting beat down for the last 5 years. Folks searching for a black male therapist, but particularly the teenagers, man. Like the teenagers will, the parents will call and say, hey, my son is hitting 14, 15, 16. I think he need a man's perspective on this one. And I think there's something to be said for that. I think the thing I say for folks who are either seeking therapy or even for therapists who hear this, like know your scope. If you recognize that you as a woman working with a guy is like a particular guy's issue is not your bag, or as a guy, if you have a woman coming to you, like same idea. You want to make sure what you're purporting that you can work with is actually able to work with. So if you got a guy's like, yeah, just I feel uncomfortable working with this. I feel like the dynamic between me and you and our gender dynamics wouldn't fly well with what we're working on. Yeah, I would say refer out and say, hey, I need, and even in your, I say for folks who are looking for therapists, be picky as hell. Be picky as much as you possibly can, because this person is holding the vulnerabilities of your day to day. So if you feel like I don't know, man, I don't know if I can bring it up with my therapist, then you might want to consider if it's an issue of like who they are. Yeah, look for a guy, look for a male therapist. You know, look for a sister that can hold space for you or something like that in this situation. So it's just as important to find what fits for you and what helps you feel the most comfortable. Because the more comfortable you are, the more vulnerable you can be.
But yeah, Bert, he made a great point. But I had a gentleman at my barbershop. He a little younger than me. He a early 30s black man. He says he doesn't feel comfortable with a male therapist, so he gets a woman therapist. So I guess, like, as Bert would say, it's kind of what you feel comfortable about. I imagine if I ever needed to go, it would probably 100% have to be a male. So, but just like Bert said, whatever works for you, and to be extremely picky.
Yeah, I think also the other thing too is like people go to therapy for different reasons. Like you can go for deep seated trauma. You can go there for just day to day stresses. Like I want to you know throw some at my boss and a lot of EAP. So side note for the folks who are using their EAP, your therapist should be able to answer this question. They need to be able to answer, what is your communication with my employer? Most EAPs, most of them, at least the ones I contract with, they have it in their therapist contract. You can't say shit to the employer. You can't say anything. The only thing we report to is the company that actually holds the benefits for the EAP. So let's say Chris, let's say you signed up with me and you want to be my client or whatever, and you saw me with your EAP benefits. You'll say you got 4 sessions. The only thing I report to your EAP is that you showed up on this time, this day, and this is how long the session was, and then they bill me, and I bill them. And that's it. So in a good EAP, nothing should go back to your employer. So it shouldn't be your boss peeking over your shoulder, seeing what you're saying in counseling once you get that EAP. Because I know that's a common fear that I hear from folks. Is like, yo, understandably, like I don't want my boss in my business if I go use my benefits, is my boss gonna be like, oh well, you're going to see your therapist for anxiety, so I should strip your hours because you can't show up regularly. Normally it shouldn't be that way. I can't say that I always practice that way, but in contract it actually shouldn't be that way.
And just for the listeners or people that may be unfamiliar with what the brothers are speaking to right now is using your health benefits through your job. A lot of employers offer the EAP, the Employee Assistance Program, for your mental health needs, where you get a certain amount of sessions free of charge. And so I think that what Brother Burt was addressing was just kind of, the fear or the anxiety that what you share with that counselor, could potentially be shared with your employer for any reason if you do go through that program. So, me personally, just if I chimed in just really quickly, um, you know, I couldn't imagine not using my job benefits, to do therapy, not using the health insurance plan just because of the costs associated with it. But when I actually started, I don't even know if my job offered the EAP. That was just something that I learned, after the fact, right? Like, so, I was already deep off into my therapy journey before I even learned that existed. But I would to like Brother Game Type was saying, there's a can you guys still hear me? Okay, because my phone was ringing. I think that there is a big point to be made, for people that may be listening, especially if you have health insurance through your employer. Even if you are not going to use the EAP program, you're still going to qualify for mental health benefits at a discounted rate. It'll work just like any of your dental or your vision insurance. So that's something that, just a point that I wanted to make real quickly.
Yeah, I like, hearing you brothers talk about the preferences and what you're comfortable with, especially what, Dr. Burt was saying about if you're not comfortable, you won't be vulnerable. Being vulnerable for most Black people is already uncomfortable. Whether you're a woman, whether you're a man, you're kind of taught to be strong, especially whenever you're outside of the house or outside of somebody that you already have an intimate relationship established with. So, a lot of times, especially if you're starting out with your mental wellness journey and you've never gone to therapy before, it is easier to kind of take the mask off and delayer when you're around someone that has a baseline amount of comfort. For me, I tend to prefer talking with a black woman because I feel like there are just certain unspoken dynamics that she understands that I don't have to unpack. And so it makes the my personal experiences easier to focus on because the more quote common experiences that black women go through, I don't have to explain those. She already gets it. So, I love that we went there, and especially for black men, where it's already a challenge for you all to be seen in a light where you're not strong without being defined as being weak. Whatever that criteria is for you to be comfortable to lay down your burdens, I'm all for it.
I want to speak to that really quickly. If I could chime in again, because one of the things that we touched on in the episode was just centered around the statistic, right? And Brother Rogers can speak to this as well. If you look at the number of mental health professionals, only 4% of those mental health professionals are black, and even less of those are going to be black men. So, what do we say to that aspect that we deal with? We say you want to look for somebody that you're comfortable with, but just how specific can we get when it's already slim pickings as far as black man or women professionals in the industry?
I can speak to my journey if you don't mind.
Yeah, go
Um,
ahead.
I I am in on both ends of this. When I was originally referred to my therapist, my current therapist, by my supervisor, my own supervisor. I had a lot of shit happen when I first became a therapist within the first few months, and my supervisor's like, in supervision was like, "Hey, I have someone you probably could or should see," and I was like, "Give me the referral, like immediately." And this woman turned out to be a white woman from New York. I ain't gonna lie to y'all, I grilled the shit out of her the first session. I was like, I'm carrying this. I'm talking about, homicides, being from the city. Can you work with this? Like, I don't even care if you experienced it, but can you work with this? Because if you cannot, I'm gonna find somebody else who can. So, I mean, I tell people all the time, man, interview a therapist. Make sure they about that action. Like the same way we check somebody's credentials when they say they from this hood or that hood. When your therapist says I can work with this, grill them. Like you're paying them money, they should be able to answer your questions about treatment. They should be able to tell you everything you need to know. So as far as it being slim pickings, you might have to if you're looking for certain specialties. Um, I would say now more so than 10 years ago when I found my therapist, there are more of our people getting into like specialty areas, trauma therapists, eating disorders, like all that kind of stuff, because our young professionals are applying pressure to these organizations saying, let us in. So it might be a better look now than it was 10 years ago, but still, we still need we need more professionals that look like us. But so if that is the case, and you find yourself in front of someone who has a specialty, and they claim I can work with this, grill the shit out of them. Because if you don't, you'll have somebody who's working way out of their scope from a cultural competency standpoint. And for anybody who hears this and they hear the sound of my voice, if you find me on social media and you inbox me, I swear to God, I will find you somebody. I have a dream team of therapists that I refer my kids to if my kids need that kind of help. So, and I think 80% of them are black therapists. So, if you need somebody, if you're like, yo, I'll be discreet as hell about it. I'll hold it. If somebody ever asks me, hey, Bert, did you refer such and such? Man, I don't know nothing about that. I'm a mob boss. I don't know nothing about that, bro. So
Right on.
I
Yes.
keep tabs on that because I know it's hard enough to be vulnerable and look for a therapist, but then the way through psychology today and like this, that, and the third, like it's pretty tough. So you're okay to inbox me, or you can look up the KC Color Collective. Like Brittany Talley and Meg did a damn good job of like collecting every every black therapist who wanted to be part of that collective in the last couple of years and got their info directly put on this website so you can find somebody. So you won't have to wade through 45,000 white clinicians to get to one black clinician. So Casey Color Collective, y'all, I'm dead ass serious. Like, go check them out because that's a quick way to actually find somebody who aligns with who you are and where you're from.
Um, you know, um, I'm a kind of switch gears for a minute, man, because both of you brothers, both Chris and Bert, said something that kind of inspired me to kind of take it here. But Chris said something about if he ever needed therapy, that he would prefer a man. And I think Bert, you mentioned that there's a wide range of different areas that you may want to seek therapy in. Where I'm going with this is, man, I'm kind of going off of my personal belief now. My personal belief is I believe that every human being can use some sort of therapy. And I feel like that the way that I came to understand therapy, or become familiar with it growing up, there was a lot of stigma around it in our community, especially amongst the man seeking help. And quite frankly, and I said this on the episode, I always felt like you had to be on some sort of extreme end of dealing with life issues before you needed therapy. So what would you guys say to that? Because it is my opinion that everybody can use some sort of therapy.
I'm
Oh,
biased, but as a physician who's now who's just gotten to the point in the last 10 years with all the trauma I've had to have what I would call a like, and that regular ass session was just about like, oh, we're just navigating dating. Oh, wow. And we kind of pointed that out. I was like, oh, we're just navigating the dating world. That's wild. Huh. And I kind of paused, like, damn, for the last 10 years, I've been processing like heavy shit, like, oh, homicides, family trauma, all this shit. So if you're just coming in like, yo, I'm struggling with regular garden variety stuff, or hey, man, sometimes I struggle with, making decisions. I struggle with setting boundaries or whatever. Or you can't name it. You're like, I'm sick of my family. I'm tired of like dealing with their foolishness. It doesn't have to be this deep seated, sit on the couch, tell me about your traumas with your mama and that kind of stuff. I mean, you can go that deep, but it doesn't have to be. Like I think I'd have been, even if I hadn't had all the trauma that I had, I think I still would benefit from having a place just to unpack all the shit that happens around me on a regular basis as a black man in America. We have our spaces, we've developed them, man. We got our barbershops, we got our pastors, we got the people that we can talk to and talk to a professional too. Like just a place to unpack, like, oh man, you got this going on. Like, and it doesn't have to be long term. Like I go long term because I have long term issues, but it didn't have to be. It can be, and even then, it doesn't have to be every week. Like I'm at the point where I see my therapist once a month, just as basically as a life check in. So it's okay to have lighter issues that doesn't involve like, oh, I'm experiencing crisis. You don't have to experience crisis to be in therapy. The same way you don't have to have a broken leg to go see a doctor.
Say that, say that. But I think Chris, did you want to take the mic? Was you gonna say something?
uh, well, I think um, that comes down to like a personal decision. Where if you feel that you said you feel everybody needs it, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it depends on like if you feel you need you do it, then you should do it because you don't want to be like and because you saying that, then you becoming a slippery yourself about everything, and everything ain't for everybody. And you say, well, if you need therapists, then everybody needs to go see a woman, or everybody needs to see a man, or a black man, or something. But I don't agree that everybody needs to see it. I think if you really struggling, you do need. Now I will say everybody needs to be honest with themselves, but I don't agree with everybody needs it.
See, like for me, I look at mental health as another form of taking care of your body. So, you have dental health, you have vision health, you have all of these different doctors that you do for these health checkups. And to not do that with your brain seems asinine to me, especially because you may not know. I know for me, man, and I spoke about this on the episode. I discovered, the whole mental health awareness. I discovered it on accident because when I went in for my first therapy sessions, I didn't think that I needed to sit down and talk to anybody, and just through sitting there and talking about what I thought was regular shit, we were able to uncover that there were some traumas, there were some diagnoses that I had. So like, it's one thing for somebody to be mature or to be educated or aware in that area because they've studied in that area, to be able to say, create their own self-assessment and say, hey, I think I should go talk to somebody. But in my mind, I feel like just living as a human being in general, you have to have medical professionals to help you along the way. And I don't think that your brain should be treated any differently. In addition to that, like just us being black folk, bro, like the shit that we deal with, the things that everybody, the culture, people that what I'm talking about, bro. Like we all connected with certain traumas, certain things that have become normalized in our community, that we've just learned how to deal with, right? And those things are not normal, and sometimes you may not know that you've normalized some things or that you've picked up some bad habits, until you actually sit down and talk to somebody. Just like you might not know that you have a horrible diet until you sit down and talk to somebody. That's the way that I look at it.
Man, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what I was going to chime in and say is that we have been forced to take abnormal, not normal, and make it normal just to get by, just to get through because of what we all came up in. So, um, unfortunately, since we had to do abnormal and the normal, at this particular point that we are learning that those things aren't normal, yes, everyone needs some form of mental health or mental therapy, should I say, not mental health, but mental therapy. Um, because we just don't realize how abnormal we grew up in and the things that we had to go through were just not normal.
Yeah, and it shapes our character and our mentality, like the way we think about certain things, the way we process certain emotions, man. Like there's a lot of bad habits that I just think, especially black man, we pick up when we have, created this stigma around mental health or this perception that you have to be, ready to be in a straitjacket before you go sit down and talk to someone.
I actually used to think the same thing, Holly, that it had to be, man, you got to be almost get ready to kill yourself before you need to go to some type of therapy. That used to be my understanding until, until we started doing this. I actually used to think the same thing.
I think most of us did, bro. Like I really think that's I mean, because I thought that for the longest, bro. But like I use the analogy I think on the episode where I said, concerning like your physical health, you may just have bad needs. You may not be paralyzed or be at the point where they need to put you in a wheelchair. But if you do not go and address the fact that your knees are not as strong as they used to be, you may be headed towards there and not know it, not realize it. That's the way that I look at mental health, bro. It's like, you can think that you've had a hold on life and have been managing it in such a way that's healthy until it's not. And so I just feel like that's the way that we all should look at just taking care of our bodies in general. If you have a doctor for every other area of your body and your well-being, why are we ignoring the mental side of that?
Yeah, I agree with everything said between Brother Rodney and Brother Mike. Even if there isn't anything wrong, in my opinion, right? And I put wrong in quotes, meaning You don't think that you're suffering from any sort of mental disorder. You feel fine. I like to pose the question on, well, what do you do when you're not fine? And how do you recognize when you're not fine? And so having a mental health professional, I really think of them as like an accountability partner, someone who gets to know who I am objectively, who learns about my commitments, my passions, what I care about in life, and who has the medical and professional expertise to help me measure when I'm okay and when I'm not okay, to help me, recognize when I might have gone through an experience that triggered me or is weighing on me and I don't know. Because that's the dangerous part about mental wellness, is that you're okay until you break. But oftentimes when we break, it's not just something that happened. It's a lot of little things that added up. And now there's this one big thing that, it's kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. And by the time that happens, it can be too late. And too late don't gotta mean, oh, I had a panic attack, I had to go to the hospital. Too late can be like, okay, now I'm picking up this bad habit and I'm on the pipe. Okay, now I'm picking up this bad habit and I can't stop, being loose in the streets, and I got all these broken homes, different families, you know what I'm saying? My kids got 10 different baby mamas, and I'm not slamming or knocking anybody. I'm just saying that sometimes we pick up bad habits that then as a culture we normalize, and it's because of the fact that we never had anyone to help us measure when we're okay and when we're not.
Absolutely. I say from my end, like I was when I first went to therapy, I was surprised by my own diagnosis. I was like, I looked at my therapist like, that shit ain't normal that I just described. She's like, she gently was like, no, no, it's not. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, what do I do with that? And what I was describing was something basic, like what I thought was basic to me. I was like, I haven't gotten a good sleep since I was 25 at the time. And I was like, I've never gotten a good night's sleep. She's like, what do you mean? I was like, she's like, expound on that. Like, explain yourself. I was like, I've never gotten more than 4 hours of sleep. And I was like, she was like, well, what wakes you up? I was like, well, sometimes like it's a bad dream. Sometimes I get started out of sleep. Sometimes it's this, that, and third. And she's like, well, how long has that been going on for? I was like, oh. I was like, I remember going to kindergarten on 4 hours of sleep. And so I just started describing more about the dreams or the nightmares that would wake me up. Or I would describe how sometimes I would get, so out of it that I, really would feel numb. And she was like, and she looked at me, was like, oh, she's like, well, what particularly brings you in? I explained like the homicides and things like that I experienced in my neighborhood and things like that. And a more recent one that happened 5 years prior to that. And she's like, what you're describing is consistent with PTSD. And I stopped. I was like, excuse me, what?
Right, right.
But didn't put two and two together, because for my brain, I was like, oh, PTSD. I made that equivalent to war vets. I had guys in my family who went to the military and came back. Guys who served in older guys who served in Nam or Desert Storm or that kind of stuff. So I knew what PTSD was. I just didn't connect that I had it. So
Right.
for 5 years of therapy, it was legitimately just working through that. And looking now, what, 8 years later, I'm like, I haven't had a flashback, and I sleep 90% of the time through the night. And like, if I get a bad night's sleep, it's a rarity now. If I have insomnia, it's a rarity now. It's how I know, like, oh shit, something's wrong. But because we are
Hey,
so used to shit going left, we don't even recognize how far off the pale we actually are. Not because we are not normal, but because the circumstances we are placed in are so abnormal that they're
hey,
causing.
Doc, let me chime in here with you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Jump in.
You talking about now? You said sleep, right? No more than 4 hours, right?
Yeah. Uh,
Okay. Let me put a different spin on this. Let me tell you a little different spin on this when it comes to sleep. Like for me, okay. Now, before I got this damn smartwatch, I couldn't, it wasn't nobody measuring my sleep at night. So I started wearing this. I wear a watch at night when I go to bed. Man, that's uncomfortable. I said, nah, I want to see what I'm doing when I sleep. So I started wearing this watch, man. Unknowingly, like nobody would notice unless you measuring your sleep. Man, there's what 4 different stages of sleep,
Mm,
and with REM being the last stage where you fall into a real deep sleep.
uh-huh.
Yes, sir.
I
REM.
found that I never ever get more than 30 to 45 minutes of REM sleep. Now, most people will say, "Oh, well, you just a light sleeper." Bullshit. That's a sign that something's going wrong,
Yeah.
and you
Right.
need some mental health to help you get into REM for longer than 30 to 45 minutes.
Right,
So
right.
Come
that's
on.
an example of why I would say everybody needs it, even though you may not know you need it.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't realize how, like, I say that we ourselves as a people are not going insane. We are placed in insane conditions. Like, for my gamers out there, we have not realized that we are playing the game with a busted controller and on hard difficulty. We make it happen because we survivors and we're resilient. We can do a lot of shit. Like, that's how our parents, our grandparents, our ancestors survived. But it takes a mental strain on us. We are being asked to run a marathon on a broken leg, and we don't know nobody else who hasn't. So we go sit down
Hey
and
Doc. So you mean back in the day we wouldn't supposed to blow in the cartridge when we put it in the Nintendo?
I stand on that. We supposed to. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care what the research says. I'm a scientist until we get to that point. I ain't no scientist in that scenario. Blow in the damn cartridge. Get your Nintendo working.
No, man, no, man. That fuck up that messed up the whole analogy. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, don't blow in the cartridge. Take that damn cartridge and get it serviced.
No, but for real though, like in all seriousness though, like go. I would say like the diagnosis never defined me. That's why I mean, people who follow me on Facebook, they probably know the story better than most strangers because they're like, oh yeah, I talk about it. I talk about it because I would argue a lot of us who grew up in a hood environment, a lot of things at the cellular level have gotten normalized. When I say normalized, I mean we don't even have a reaction to it. Like guys start shooting, we're like, oh shit, and then we dip off somewhere. But we don't have that like we don't even have fear sometimes about it anymore. I mean, we didn't get into it on the podcast as much, but like,
Yeah,
how many of us have buried somebody or had
yeah.
somebody? We know how many times have we been caught in the crossfire somewhere? Why is that? Why is that Ricky was our coming of age story in Boys in the Hood, and why did everybody resonate with that story? Because we
Mhm.
all know a Ricky.
And wasn't nothing normal in that movie, bro.
No,
Like,
nothing.
like, but it was normal for us. Like, I
Yeah,
didn't know. Like, that movie came out in what 91. You
91.
know, I remember seeing it in the theater with my mom and my sister, bro, and none of that was normal, but we all resonated with it because it felt like it was our story finally being told on film. And these were things that I didn't know were not normal until I was much, 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 much older, bro. Like, some of the things, like, that's a perfect analogy, bro. And I ain't mean to cut you off, but definitely, bro. Like, we all resonate with certain elements because they are normal to us. They're part of our culture. They're part of our sort of unwritten rules. But a lot of those unwritten rules are fucked up, and they have a toll on our mental well-being, and oftentimes we don't even realize it.
Yeah,
There's something to be said about all of your behavior, right? So I also want to switch gears on this, man, and brother Rogers, you can help us kind of stay grounded in it. There was always a belief that, especially amongst black men in our community, man, that you had to be real far gone. There were certain diagnoses that you would also be, almost be ashamed of having those certain diagnoses associated with you, right? So for some black men, they just didn't want to even hear about those diagnoses. But some of these diagnoses, bro, like they're common. They're common. So I really want to kind of speak to the fact that a lot of people, man, let me just speak for the man in general.
mm,
A lot of men in general may say that they don't see the need for that sort of professional help because they feel like that they are very secure, confident, consistent in their manhood routine, which they will tell you is rooted in logic and not emotion. What would you say to that? Anybody in the room? This
Logic.
whole not this whole
Well,
not this
well,
whole
um,
concept. Go ahead. I'm just making sure that I got the question right and everybody understands it. I just want everybody to
I
speak to this whole
remember.
concept that black men feel like that logic and emotion is, a male and a female thing.
I think everybody know men are emotional.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh, well, just as much as women. However, I think that when it comes down to it, women most of the time tend to lean on that more than how a man will lean more on logic. I'm getting this wrong, but I think they did some research when it comes to the male and the female brain, and it affirms that women tend to lean more on the emotional of certain things, of their feelings and things, than compared to the man, right? So, because you ask a man, if you ask a man what are you looking for in a woman, and you ask a woman what you're looking for in a man, the things is going to be different. Like, and we can kind of make it seem like we're trying to make it. I think the concept of this, and we have to think about it is, and I'm deep rooted in this. Men and women are different, right? So what happens is you got to be careful about you trying to make it seem like, well, we're kind of all we almost kind of like we're the same. We're not physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially. Hell, they say 80% of the things on the market is women stuff. Like of all the money getting spent, consumer stuff, 80% of that is dominated by women. That is huge. So what we have to understand is men or women are different. Our strengths and weaknesses, they complement each other. So yes, women are usually more emotional than men. Not saying men are not emotional. Like just when we play sports, how high fives and scream and everything. But when it comes to like certain emotional decisions, women are usually more emotion or it's more into the emotion than logic. Like you hear women a lot of times you hear women say, well, I need a vacation or I need a new purse because I earned it. It might not necessarily be the best financial thing, right? That's more of an emotional thing, right? Compared to a man like, hey, well, right now I really don't have it. And most men and married people tell you that. The woman like, well, I think we should do. And it's not based on logic. It's based on emotion, how they feel. That's pretty much predominantly how they are. I'm not saying 100%, but yes, a lot of that is they're rooted in emotion and not logic. That's why with most relationships, or if you ask most women, they want a man that is more mentally stronger than them, right? And if you think about it, particularly me, in every relationship I got, when it comes to a woman, my children's mother, my mother, my sister, women I'm dealing with, it's more or less more. I'm the guy that they're coming to when they have all these quote unquote emotional breakdowns. I'm the one that, hey, let's calm down, let's think about this, because they're already deep rooted in emotion. Like most people, most of it
Chris,
is. And if that
Chris,
and if
Yo,
that
Chris,
dynamic switch,
yo,
it's not going to work. It's just
Chris.
yo.
Let
not
me
going to
ask
work for the long term.
Chris.
I think it
Chris,
depends on.
I know it's a lot of people that want to reply to you, Chris, but I just want to ask you a really quick question. Right now, do you think that you were emotional in your answer?
No, that was based and rooted in logic. That's based and rooted in logic. That's what I'm saying. But I am an
You got
emotional
it.
man like
You
everybody else.
got it.
However,
You
a
got it.
lot of my stuff is rooted in logic, like most men are.
I think
All
that like
right.
the idea of being rooted in logic is a misnomer. I think. Okay, so let's leave room for the socialization, right? We're socialized different. I agree with that. Men and women are socialized different. Like the way that we as men are responded to when we're in pain when we're younger is way different than little girls are. So that divide that happens realistically when that divergence happens between like personalities when girls stop playing with boys and boys stop playing with girls about 10, 11 years old, that becomes its own particular culture. And that's where our divide grows from. Then you start adding trauma on top of it. You start adding all that shit on top of that. That makes it way, way different. Now, that being said, decision making kind of stuff. I mean, when I hear a guy say, "But bro, I need them J's to come out like in December," Negroes been buying the same damn 11s for years off an emotional decision. So I understand what you're saying about the financial aspect. That's very, very true. Very true. And thinking about the idea of like, when it comes down to decision making and what a person considers to be an emotional container, if you create a scenario where you have a guy who is cut off from his own emotions, sure, he can hold a container. He can sit back and listen to somebody vent and cry and everything else. But what I ask the guys I work with is, hey, where do you go? Where do you go in your day to day space that's not with me? Where do you go to unpack this stuff? Because you're not impervious to pain. You feel. We feel awful when something happens. We feel pain when our sports team lose. We feel pain when we don't get something like a right job or something like that. We get nervous. We get scared. I think that's a myth that men have told themselves, have been told that you don't, especially we as black men, we're told that you don't feel. Like, it's not true. We ain't Wolverine for real, for real. We don't just self factor heal ourselves in that situation either. So if you're holding that space for all the women around you, which is admirable, bro, I think that's a hell of a thing to do. I always ask my guy, where are you going to unpack your shit that just doesn't involve like, because I'm guilty of this too, even as a therapist. I'll sit next to my guys, we'll play video games, we'll watch the game, and somebody asks, hey man, what's going on in my boy's life, man? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what he got going on. I don't ask him kind of questions. We just talk about, hey man, LeBron having a good ass game, ain't he? But we need to start digging deeper in that situation and start saying, hey, are you okay? Because that's the space where men actually heal, is reconnecting what was lost a long ass time ago. When we first skinned our knee when we 3, 4 years old, somebody told us to man up when we're actually still a little boy. And I understand we're trying to raise men to deal, especially us as black men, we're raised in a world that sometimes doesn't give a fuck about us. And and how can you reconnect and find a safe place to just be if you're not allowed to take off the damn armor and actually be vulnerable and say, yeah, I'm fucked up behind this. Or yeah, I'm actually like concerned about this. This is how we have like guys acting out sideways, thinking it's just I'm making a logical call. Your emotions are involved too. It just means that you're leaving out an incredible amount of data if you don't factor in your emotions and how you feel about a situation. The same way if somebody's purely emotional, you're leaving out a hell of like half the data you leave on the table when you think about like, well, logically, does this make sense? We got to merge the two, and I think there's space for merging the two when two people are on the same page in a relationship too.
I just don't. I believe. I'm sorry, Princess. I'll give you the mic here in just a second. I just think that we as humans, we all have the same subset of emotions. And like you said, you brought up the whole socialization. The socialization is where we get that belief that man only react with logic and women more so with emotion. But any decision, anything that you're doing, like bro, and you have to be dead to be void of emotion. There's emotion involved in every decision that you make, every move that you make. It's just that we've been taught that it's not emotion if it's not sad or the softer emotions, right? But all emotions, all of those things are emotions. So like when you're being aggressive, that's an emotion. That's an emotional reaction. And if you've told yourself that it is logical to be the aggressor in a situation, you're still acting with emotion. So that's just my 2 cents on it.
Brother Rodney, it's
Yeah, I
like you were
fully.
in my head. It's like you were in my head. That was basically what I was gonna say is, I think that again, since we're using the term socializing, it is a man's world. I don't care what nobody say. It's a man's world. With the general consensus of what men is thinking, that goes. And so this whole concept and notion that women are driven by emotions and men are not, I think that's just it's not accurate, right? For the reasons that Rodney's saying, I would pose, I guess, one perspective is that a lot of men, pride drives their emotions. This was something that we talked about on the unpacking last season when we were discussing, our black men protecting black women and children. And there was a conversation about how a woman bet not jump in front of her man when he about to fight or get into it with somebody. And it could be a situation where somebody says something crazy to you and now you're about to put your life at risk because your pride got triggered and now you're angry and you mess around and do something, you get shot and killed. Now I don't have a protector for my family. Those were actions that in decisions that were made driven by emotions. It's just that what triggers our emotions and the way that we expresses them look different. And to a man, it feels very logical. He was talking to me crazy. What do you mean? I was supposed to just let him do that? In a woman's mind, it's like, yeah, because you were supposed to come home and take care of responsibilities that you have to me and the kids. But in the man's mind, it's like it's a no-brainer that I'm supposed to command respect and make sure everyone understands my dominance because that's also a way of protection. So that's just an example of how men can be driven by emotion. It just looks different. And it's normalized as being logical.
Say that.
I fully agree that men are emotional. The thing is this, and I can speak from experience, and I'm most men here. When you do not control your emotion, you tend to start doing things that you'll look back and you'll kind of regret. This kind of with the whole J. Cole thing, to where you sat on that for a few days, right? You make this song, and then you come back to, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have made the song, and then you take the song back. See him not sitting there and controlling his emotions and think is
You
why he
can't
looked like a
control your
sucker.
emotions. Like that's what I think is bullshit. Like, bro, there's no such thing as controlling
Yes,
your
yes, well, yes,
emotions.
yes, it is.
You can be
I
mindful,
disagree.
you can be aware
And
of
you,
them, but you cannot
There's emotional
control your
intelligence.
emotions.
Yes, you can. Yes, you
Nah,
but
bro,
can.
but here's
that's
the
not
thing.
control.
Here's
That's
the thing. Here's
intelligence.
the
That's what
thing.
I said, Bill. I said you can be mindful and you can be aware. That's what intelligence is. That's
Holly
not
Rod, have you ever
control.
thought about Holly? Have you ever thought about somebody said something or did something you want to punch them in the mouth? You were like, man, I'm about
Yeah,
to punch it through the mouth. But watch this. You thought about it, right? You
right.
said, man,
Right.
that might not be a wise
Those
thing
are
to do.
right. I'm having a
So that's you
conversation
controlling
with
your
myself.
emotions.
That's not a
That's not
control of
you.
my emotions because
That's
I
not you
still
controlling
want to
your emotions.
listen. It's not me controlling my emotions because I still want to punch him in the motherfucking mouth. I
Right.
still want to punch him in the motherfucking mouth. The emotion ain't
Come
went
on.
nowhere. All
Yeah.
I did was
But why
suppress the
didn't you?
fucking emotion. All I did that's mental intelligence. Mental intelligence, bro, is different than control.
Yeah.
I didn't control my emotion. I still want to punch that motherfucker in the mouth. I just didn't do it because
Oh no,
I
I
was
think that's
aware and
tomato
mindful.
tomato.
Nah.
Okay.
There's a difference in controlling one's emotions and stifling them. A lot of times, they control your emotions and stifle them. Don't feel them. I think we need to unpack that word. Like, what we mean by control. I can you put somebody hook you up to fMRI machine and said, "Hey, you're having emotions." Hold on, dude. Like, if you said, "Hey, I am controlling my emotions," I guarantee that fMRI machine would light up every time you had an emotion. So it's not necessarily that you're not controlling them; is that they are running the show. That when it's like a switchboard goes off when somebody feels a big amount of emotions and their emotional lobe goes off. I don't hold on. I will do it in a second. So when our emotional lobe goes off, when that parietal lobe, that temporal lobe goes off, and starts firing. If your frontal lobe is not online, then you're being ran by your emotion. And dudes happen all the time. But if there's a scenario where you have both online at the same, then you're able to feel what's happening in your body. You're able to communicate. You're able to be logical and emotional at the same time. So if I'm like right now, I'm watching my little girls play. If they were to fall and skin their knee, now logically I know they will heal from that feeling. They'll heal from that feeling of skin knee. But I also will be have emotion too as well. Say, man, I feel bad for you. I feel awful for you. Let's get you cleaned up. Logic says I need to help them, put some Neosporin on it, put a band-aid on it. But we can't. We making it a false divide that says one is emotional and one is logic. If you say, because when guys say I need to control my emotions, if you control your emotions in that way and you stifle them, odds are you're gonna be controlling everybody else around you. Because if you watch a man get overwhelmed, odds are what does he do? He tries to control everything around him. I need everybody to shut up. You trying to control your environment, bro. You the one who's dysregulated, not them. So finding out like how we regulate ourselves so we're not being ran by our emotions rather than actually like being connected to ourselves and people around us. That's just my two
Wait,
cents.
the way I
Yeah,
look at
I feel
control, I'm
that.
sorry, just real quick. The way I look at control, bro, is that if you can control something, then you can change it, right? So if something is powered off, I got a control button where I can power that motherfucker on. If I want to punch a motherfucker in the mouth, bro, but I don't do it, then if I can control that emotion, then instead of wanting to punch him in the mouth, you know what, bro? I want to get this motherfucker some dap. Bro, if I can't flip my fucking emotion, bro, I didn't control it in my mind, bro. All I did was manage it. Managing and controlling is something completely different because to me, control means I can switch from happy to sad at the push of a fucking button. And emotions don't work like that.
Yeah, maybe like putting it a different way, getting out of emotions and focusing on a different type of chemical process is hunger, right? You can't really control when you're hungry, but you can control when you eat. So with your emotions, it's like you can't control the emotions that you're feeling. You just can control the behaviors and the actions that you demonstrate in spite of those feelings. A lot of times, in order to control emotions, in order to control hunger, you have to trigger some sort of chemical reaction, i.e., medication, right? Like phentermine is a very common medication that's given to people to help reduce their appetite because it can cause different chemical reactions. So, in my opinion, just by our thoughts, I don't think that our thoughts alone can control our emotions. I think that we can just be aware of them and use our power to control which behaviors we demonstrate with the awareness of our
That's
emotions.
accurate. That's what a lot of guys subscribe to cognitive behavioral therapy and not recognize it's limited as hell. It's a limited look. If you just think that if I think differently, therefore I will feel differently, that's not the whole entire scope. That is one therapeutic, one and only one therapeutic modality that is there. It's not the only one because there are certain scenarios, and I don't want to bore you out of tears with the brain stuff. But there's a portion of your frontal lobe, the front part of your brain, that also doesn't fully develop until you're 25. Like that is responsible for formulating speech and receiving speech. You get emotional enough, that bad boy will go offline. I've seen folks in session who are not stutterers develop a stutter when they get emotional. I've seen folks who you're talking to them, but they can't hear you because they can't receive speech. So it's not that like we can't. I think we give that frontal lobe too much power to believe that like, oh yeah, if I just think differently about this, bro, I could just. If this worked, if that worked, if logic changed the thought process of someone, changed the emotional process of somebody all the time, we wouldn't be having the debate about who's better, LeBron or Jordan, in the barbershop. We wouldn't have it anymore. You would just somebody would just go some cold hard facts and stats and like, okay, good, over. But bring it up in a barbershop. Hell, bring up the current Kendrick Drake beef right now. Folks is picking sides. I don't know why, but they're picking sides
Emotion.
because
They
Kendrick
acting
won.
on emotion. Man can act with logic on anything besides sports and hip hop is basically what we see today.
So so my thought on the emotion deal. So I mean, it's safe to say men are emotional, women are emotional. I think the difference is uh, actually how we approach things, and what I mean by that, I'm gonna try to simplify, so don't crucify me. So if a man sees a problem, for the most part, he's gonna go through that ABCD for the most part. And from what I've seen from women I know, if it's a problem, it's it's not, it's not, hey, how do we attack this, piece by piece, step by step. It's okay. They're seeing like, okay, the destruction at the end of this problem versus trying to solve it. So does that make sense at all to y'all?
It
It
does,
make
but I just
perfect
don't
sense.
think
It make perfect
I just
sense.
don't think this. I don't think that it's a man versus women trait, bro. Because like just me being married, I'm gonna pick on myself for example. There are times, bro, where I'm in that seat that you're talking about, JB. But then there are also times where if I can come to my wife about something, and I'm the complete opposite. Man, I don't know what the fuck we finna do, and
So let me say this.
all I can
I
see
don't want
is
to
the
speak in absolutes. I don't want to speak in absolutes because, well, yep, just like you, I could be on that opposite side of the spectrum, whereas my wife could be on the other side, and any woman, so to speak, to kind of depend upon the situation. I would say just in terms of a lion's share of how it happens. Typically, that's what I see. But I
Yeah,
definitely don't want to speak in absolutes.
yeah. So I'm, if you all don't mind representing the sisters, I'm gonna step in here and say that I largely agree with JB on this one in terms of when women are faced with a problem, the general consensus is that most women focus on the fact that they're having the problem instead of focusing on steps that they can take for the solution. It's I don't know. I'm not saying, again, I'm not saying this is all women, but this is just something that I've learned to experience, especially in the professional world. So I work in the investment industry, and a lot of roles that most women have in the investment industry are administrative, or they're client facing, right? Where they can use their intuition or organizational skills, skills that most women are born, kind of born naturally having and being superior at, right? Relative to men, those are the roles that they typically are in. They're not typically in roles where they have to decide, okay, what investment strategy can I come up with to overcome this problem or this challenge that my client might have? Or, oh, my client just lost X number of dollars in their portfolio. What caused that? It didn't perform the way that I wanted it to perform. There are very few women that play in that role. I'm actually on a team of almost 25 men or 25 people, and I'm the only woman. And it is a role where it's solution based, strategy based. So, not saying, again, speaking in absolutes at all, I agree with that. But I do think, generally speaking, that women tend to focus on the details of the problem. Why am I here? Instead of thinking about or envisioning what can the solution look like, or creating a different type of path.
I just didn't grow up seeing that. And I'm just gonna take it there. Like what I grew up, I was raised primarily by women, by black women, single black mothers, who got shit done while the men were lazy, sat around moping, and so I that's like, to me it just feels like it's an individual thing. Like yes, I feel like ideally, like in ideal situations, that's kind of what the balance of the natural order is supposed to look like, but I just don't feel like it's always that.
Here's a great example, Holly. Right, I'm about to get you. This I'm about to take you out the game. Who won that? Who won that? Who won that? Kendrick Lamar Drake
What
battle.
do that have to do with the, what do that have to do
What,
with
no, no,
me?
I'm gonna show you. Let me show you. Let me show you. Let me show you. I
What do
agree,
that have?
Kendrick won, but listen to me. But
All
I've
right.
heard multiple people say Drake won. It's not an absolute, but the overall consensus, Kendrick won. But you will hear
What do
people
that?
say Drake won. So for what
That
you're
ain't.
saying is, since you
Uh,
saw it in your own self, then you think that it's more of an overall consensus. It's not. It's
no,
not
I'm not
absolute.
saying that. I'm
Yeah,
not
That's what
saying
you
because I
just
saw it
said.
in myself. Because
yeah,
the majority of the time, I am on the opposite seat. That's what I said to JB. I said most of the time, I'm in that role that you're talking about, but there are times when I'm not. Then I flipped it and I said what I grew up seeing. I didn't see men being the ones that were the problem solvers. I saw that from women.
yeah, yeah. If I can, JB, I see you about to go, but Rodney, we talked about this, the sisters, on several different episodes in the first season, where if women are put in a situation where they have to, they will. Right? If they have to find solutions, if they have to make ends work, if they have to serve in roles that
Oh
don't
yeah.
necessarily feel natural to them, they can do it, especially Black women, because there's this survival of the fittest. We're all human, right? All humans have a brain. All humans know how to problem solve. All humans want to survive. But what you will find from most women is that if they had to choose between being in that seat versus being in a different seat, they would take being in a different seat. They don't get they don't get fulfillment, right? Or re-energized from sitting in that solution provider seat. It takes a lot out of them. It kind of beats them down. It makes them feel like they're carrying too much. And so, yes, they are capable of doing it, but they would prefer not to do it. And that was kind of where I was getting at with the professional realm. You get to choose your profession. And that's why I think that it speaks volumes. We're in a professional field that I'm in that's very technical. The solutions based roles, women choose not to be in those roles.
Well put. And Holly Rod, you married up. You did a great job marrying up. And you well put. I 100% agree with what you said. 100%.
Oh yeah, sure he did.
JB, was you gonna say something? Because I have to
Yeah,
speak on the
so
defense. Go
so
ahead.
I'm gonna pull on my old psychology educational background. Really, everybody said it. Our environment shapes us. So if we have to adapt to a different situation, that's what we do. So that's why Princess just said it. Like she'd rather, like the women she spoke to, they'd rather not. But if they have to, guess what? They will because there's no choice. Because bottom line is we got to survive.
So that kind of speaks, I think, more to my point. Most of my life, bro, I saw that from women, and they had their back against the wall. There was only one man that I ever known that fit into that role that we've talking about, and that was my grandfather. My grandfather, he went to work every day. My grandmother never worked a day in her life. They had 6 kids. Everything was pretty much on his shoulders. But we talk about the concept of, for women, they do it when they feel like they have to. I feel like that's no different for men. The whole concept of, if man didn't, if they didn't have to do it, would they still do it? I don't think that there's some natural ability. Like, I felt like my grandfather carried a lot of fucking trauma. I felt like he carried a lot of, like just, it was all written over his behavior, the way that he used to drink himself under a table, cussing out everybody at every turn because he felt like he was pretty much working his fucking ass off for everybody around him. So he was old and bitter. Like, these are the things that lead to man needing so much fucking mental therapy that we ignore for so long, because we've got it set in our mind that we have to do it. Like, whether our back is against the wall or not, we have to do it and be in those roles. And if we're doing that and carrying all of that responsibility and not getting therapy for what we deal with, just being a man, I feel like it brings us back full circle to this whole conversation. Because the only man that I ever seen do that 100%, it never was any other way. My grandmother never sat in that role where she had to be the problem solver. And I saw my grandfather do that. Other than that, that was the only man that I ever saw do that. And it looked like it was more natural for men when they should have been stepping up to the plate. They didn't. So women were in those roles because they felt like they had to be. But why did they feel like they had to be? Because there were men that didn't step up to the plate. So that's why I don't feel like that it's just a man versus woman thing. I think that it's a human thing.
I agree with you. I think in terms of being a lot of the conversations that I see and I kind of stay out the way of online about, like, should a man and woman go 50-50 on this? Should we do this? Should we do that? A lot of these questions are actually answered, at least partially answered, or mostly answered. Trauma by trauma. We are talking about the idea of, like, if you put somebody in insane conditions, we make wildly different decisions. We make wildly different decisions based on when our alarm bells are going off. Imagine if you lived in a house where the smoke alarm is going off constantly. You cook differently. You move differently. You sleep differently. Everything about it changes. So when we talk about, like, oh well, yeah, the man had to, like, cover 100% everything. My grandfather, my great grandfather had to do things this way. There used to be more. There's less room for collaboration when both parties are under alarm bells. And most asking a question, even individually for folks in therapy, is like, when you find yourself stressed out, do you turn towards your partner or do you turn away from? And if we hide under the mythos of, like, oh, I'm more logical or more emotional, then we are turning away from our partners in the process by saying, oh well, yeah, I feel like I had to get it done. Ask your partner about what they brought to the table too, like what they actually could help out with, so that they would feel less alone. It's about, like, what each person needs in terms of solving problems. And, like, if you ask someone, anybody, any human, to shoulder 100% of the emotional load, the financial load, the whatever load in that scenario, I guarantee you're gonna fry somebody. And like you said, bitter. All bitterness is anger that couldn't go anywhere else. It's anger left to fester. You feel bitter because you didn't get what you wanted out of life. Because you, like, I pick on my own grandfather. My grandfather was born in Arkansas. He has been working legitimately since he was 8 years old. Working since he was 8 years old. He had to leave home because he was defending his mother. struck a white man with a shovel. They put him on a train the next day to the next town over, and he's been literally working since then. He is now over 80.
Mm.
The bitterness that because he's a very jovial man, but for the vast majority of his life that everyone else knew him, he drank like a fish. He didn't stop until 87. And I've only known him in my 36 years as a man who is sober and is kind and plays dominoes with you. But before then, that man was a demon apparently to everybody. But the man I know is somebody different. So when we talk about the mental load and the capacity that we all have to take on, like asking the question as black men and women, do we turn toward each other or turn away from each other when we get stressed the fuck out? And if we don't, then we're gonna leave each other isolated on the island by ourselves. Like the addition of I hope we heal together with each other, not away from each other. That's my thought process with it.
Amen to that.
Very good. That was a very good word, Bert. Hey,
Yes.
whenever my craziness overwhelm me, I'll hire you to be my therapist. All right,
Hey,
thank you.
I honestly like dead ass serious. I get this shit away. Anytime I get on a platform like this, I try to give as many trips to the trade away as possible. Like, and if I want to give everybody a head start, man. They already locked us out of therapy for years and years because of the high prices and insurance and everything else. So now that I'm in this position, I'm giving away all trade secrets as long as I can until they come get
Right
me.
on. Right on. Right on.
You after seeing me, you might say, you know what, I'm gonna quit.
Hey,
I might push you out. I might push you out the
Cause you
I don't
jail.
got
know,
that
bro.
much, cause you got that much untreated mental shit going on, Chris. I'm glad to
Right,
see. See, that's where
right,
it go right
Hey,
there.
right.
That's where it
Okay.
starts right there.
I'm actually
Yes,
borderline
sir.
brilliant. And ain't nothing wrong with me. I'm fine.
Uh,
But if I ever need
eh,
somebody, then
Mm.
I'll holler at Bert.
Hey, I
the most
appreciate it. Hey, listen, I think honestly, for real, been in this. I've been doing this for 13 years, bro. There's nothing that surprises me anymore, and literally nothing that scares you from a mental health standpoint. Like nothing. I cut my teeth working at Truman's Behavioral Health Emergency Department at 3 a.m. in the morning. So that's how I learned how to be a therapist. So I'll be fine.
right on, man. Right on. I'm looking at the time, man. We had a really good dialogue tonight, man. So if anybody else got any more comments or thoughts, man, before we wrap it up,
Yes, I do.
go
Um,
ahead.
well, thank you, brothers, for allowing me to sit in on this session, unpacking with y'all. But Dr. Burt had said something when he was talking about, partners and being able to recognize how you show up and, identifying what partner can contribute, like what I guess contributions at a time, or like maybe I can
Mhm.
contribute more financially, maybe I can contribute more emotionally, but there's always going to be some areas where your partner can't contribute.
Yeah.
I think there was a video, it was like a Facebook reel where a therapist was talking about how it's so critical in a marriage to stay in check with how much your spouse has to pour out and how much you have to pour out, and so she was given the example of how periodically she'll sit down with her spouse and say, hey, I got 60%.
Mm-hmm.
I'm running at 60%, and her spouse might say, well, I'm running at 50%. Okay, well, ain't nobody at 100%. So who makes up the difference? And I think that when you approach life that way, right, and when you approach your relationships, your friendships, your professional colleagueships that way, you have to always think about how much you have to give. Um, and what you don't have to give, you probably could get from a mental health professional because they'll help you with measuring, they'll help you with tools and resources, to get you through the day or to get you through what stage you're in if you're not at 100%. So I just want to throw that out there, given the topic of this episode and how we bust open season 2 with the brothers. Y'all, everybody can benefit at some point from a mental professional.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I got.
Agreed. Agreed.
Right on, right on. Well, look, man, we appreciate everybody, man, joining in, taking some time out of your night, man. I know everybody want to get to these NBA playoffs or maybe back to that beef that really is over with now, all hail the King, Kendrick Lamar. But man, again, man, all jokes aside, man, we appreciate y'all for this, man. And make sure that we check out the sisters premiere. Next Thursday, it'll be streaming on all platforms at the same time, 5:40 p.m. Central. I believe the sisters episode is called "Breathing in Suffocation." So I'm
Yes.
real anxious to see where they went with that conversation, man. So until next time, man, I appreciate y'all again for joining. Peace, love, and blessings to everybody. Enjoy y'all night, man, and I hope we
Take
heal.
care, y'all.
Hey,
Appreciate it.
do the same, man. Peace, everybody.
Right on.